She hadn't planned to cry. Not there. Not in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard with paparazzi lenses darting from behind barricades like mechanical vultures. But there she was, tears sliding silently past her lashes as she stared into the sun-washed crowd, the chants pulsing like a second heartbeat in her chest. "Ice out of L.A., someone screamed. It rippled, grew. Thousands joined. And Kim Kardashian felt her ribs tighten like they hadn't since she gave birth to North. Something primal. Something that screamed this moment was bigger than a hashtag. Her phone buzzed. She didn't look. It had been buzzing all day. Kanye. Her publicist. TMZ, probably. She didn't care. 3 hours earlier, Kim had been standing in the foyer of her Calabasas estate, staring at the marble floor. It was the Instagram kind of morning. Filtered sunlight, eucalyptus diffusing through the air, assistants whispering, coffee being poured. But that morning, it all felt unclean. News had broken of the ICU raids, and not in a vague, national way. This was LA. This was families in East Hollywood being dragged out at gunpoint. A 16-year-old girl live-streaming her dad's arrest. A crying toddler clinging to a neighbor's leg. Kim had watched that video 3 times before she stood up and said, "I'm going." "Going where?" asked Stephanie, her assistant, already sensing the PR chaos. "Downtown. Wherever this is happening. Kim, your security needs a heads up, and we have the scheme shoot it to it. Cancel it." And with that, she was in the SUV, sunglasses on, heart already cracking. She hadn't been to a real protest since the early days of criminal justice reform, back when she'd faced lawmakers in D.C. and won clemency for Alice Johnson. But this felt more dangerous. Raw. Like L.A. was ready to combust. By the time she arrived near MacArthur Park, the streets were electric. It wasn't just young activists or immigrants. There were actors she hadn't seen since awards season. Pedro Pascal in a plain t-shirt, hair unkempt, holding a sign that said, "No human is illegal." Eva Longoria with no makeup and a megaphone. Chrissy Teigen with Luna on her hip, trying to stay calm as people swarmed them for selfies and tearful hugs. Then came Mark Ruffalo. His voice cut through the street like gravel dragged across cement. "When we allow militarized raids on innocent people, we lose the soul of this country." Kim hadn't planned to speak. But when a young girl, a DACA recipient, maybe 16, handed her a mic and whispered, "They'll listen to you," she couldn't ignore it. Her voice shook. This city was built by immigrants. My dad's family came here from Armenia, fleeing a genocide. They didn't have money. They didn't speak English. But they had hope. And if IC had existed back then the way it does now, I wouldn't be here. A hush fell. Then, a roar of applause. Cheers. Some booze too. A few people called her a performative princess. But she didn't flinch. Backstage, if you could call it that, a corner behind a tacos stand blocked off with folding chairs, Finneas was holding an ice pack to his shoulder. "They gassed us earlier," he muttered, still dazed. "Like, full-on rubber bullets and tear gas. I thought they weren't supposed to do that to Americans." "They're not supposed to do a lot of things," Kim said. And that's when the explosion hit. It wasn't a real bomb, but it felt like one. A flashbang grenade from federal forces stationed a block away, tossed after the crowd surged too close to a government barricade. Kim dropped instinctively, covering her head. Luna screamed. Chrissy tackled her behind a bench. People ran. Others stood their ground. Kim's ears rang like glass bells underwater. The next 5 minutes were chaos. A man staggered past her with blood pouring from his eye. A girl in a UCLA hoodie clutched her arm like it was broken. Someone yelled, "Medic," over and over until their voice broke. Pedro Pascal stood in front of a line of officers, arms raised, daring them. And when Kim finally pulled herself up, bruised, dusty, mascara smeared, she looked at the sky and whispered, "They're making war on their own people." Later, in a borrowed van, phone finally checked, she read the DHS response to her Instagram post. A spokeswoman named Trisha McLaughlin had tweeted a collage of mugshots. "Which one of these child predators do you think should have been allowed to stay?" it read. Kim felt sick. She knew what they were doing. Weaponizing fear. Using exceptions to define the rule. "You know what's funny?" she said to Eva Longoria, who was dabbing a cut on her cheek. "They never post mugshots of Wall Street fraudsters. Or cops who beat people on camera. But let a migrant mom steal a fake social to feed her kids, and suddenly she's the face of evil." Eva nodded grimly. "They're scared of us now. That's why they're striking back." Kim opened her group chat. Celebrity Resistance, a half-joking name someone had made months ago. She typed, "We go public. All of us. Together." Not a tweet. not a statement. A real response. Press conference. Lawyers. Testimonies. She had sinned. Mark Ruffalo replied, "I'm in. Let's make noise they can't drown out." Finneas replied with a photo of his swollen wrist. "They want war. They got it." Then, from Chrissy, "Let's use our money the way they use their weapons." Kim sat back and watched the city lights flicker like a grid of electric anger. Tomorrow, she knew, the real battle would begin. Not just in the streets, but in courtrooms, on news panels, in living rooms where people who had never thought twice about IC were suddenly asking, wait, what are they actually doing? And for the first time in weeks, Kim felt awake. Alive. Scared. But ready. They didn't sleep that night. Not really. Kim sat cross-legged on the white velvet couch in her minimalist living room, a full team buzzing around her, stylists, legal advisors, PR specialists, even 2 security consultants from DC flown in by morning. But the phone call that shook her came at 3:21 a.m. "Kim, this is more than optics now." It was Van Jones. His voice was steel-wrapped in velvet, exhausted but charged. "They're briefing Homeland Security on you by name. You, Mark, Eva, all of you. You're not just famous anymore. You're targets." She didn't answer right away. "I can handle it," she said finally. But even as she said it, she saw the faces in her mind again, the screaming girl, the old man with the bloody temple, Luna clutching Chrissy's arm, sobbing. The press conference was set for 11 a.m. at the Mayborn Hotel in Beverly Hills. By 10:30, the lobby was packed. The media swarmed like it was Oscar night. Only this time the stakes were federal. Every network was live-streaming. Outside, helicopters buzzed low over the city. Pedro Pascal walked in wearing a black hoodie that said Dignidad across the chest. Chrissy showed up with no makeup and a fire in her eyes. Even Finneas, wrists still wrapped and face swollen, stood tall beside them. Kim came last. Not because she wanted drama, but because stepping out of the bulletproof SUV, knowing snipers could be watching, required her to gather every ounce of will she had. The room went quiet as she took the mic. "This isn't about politics anymore," she said. "It's about humanity." She spoke of the raids, of the surveillance, of the broken families. Then she passed the mic to a woman named Lucia Ramirez, a nurse, mother of 3, an undocumented immigrant who had witnessed her husband dragged away just 4 days earlier. Lucia spoke through sobs, but with a strength that turned spines into steel. "They didn't care my son was watching. They didn't care my daughter begged them. They didn't even let me say goodbye. And now I sleep on the floor with my kids because they wake up screaming." There wasn't a dry eye on the panel. Pedro placed a hand on her shoulder. Mark Ruffalo stood, fists clenched. And then Kim said it. "We demand a federal review of IC procedures. We demand the immediate release of nonviolent detainees. We demand a moratorium on raids in California until an independent audit can be conducted. And if these demands aren't met, we will fund legal action. We will fund protection. And we will not be silenced." It was a declaration of war. Within hours, DHS responded with a veiled threat, disguised as a statement. "While we respect all Americans' right to free speech," it read, "we also remind the public that harboring undocumented individuals is a federal crime." But the next morning, the New York Times ran the headline, "Kim versus IC, Hollywood takes on the government." By that afternoon, donations to immigrant defense funds spiked by $11 million. Back at Kim's house, she paced the marble floor, unread text stacking up like pressure behind her temples. Kanye had called. Twice. He'd been quiet for months, lost in his own world, but apparently news like this reached even him. "You good?" he said on voicemail. "You want me to pull up or something?" "You know, flex." She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her laptop and stared at the live stream. Footage of a new raid unfolding in El Monte. Only this time, the press had arrived first. A drone hovered. Protesters linked arms. And 2 IC officers visibly hesitated on camera before retreating into their van. That video went viral in under an hour. Something was shifting, but not everything was progress. At 2:14 p.m., one of Kim's assistants burst into the room. "You need to see this." Fox News. Tucker Carlson substitute hosting with that gleam of condescension. Behind him, footage of Kim crying at the protest. The cheer in red, "Millionaire influencer cries for illegal immigrants, but not for victims." Then came the panelists. One claimed Kim had secret investments in private immigration firms, completely false. Another insinuated that she was pushing for open borders to help schemes expand into cheaper labor markets. "Follow the money," he said. "It's always money with these people." Kim didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. Let them talk, Eva said when she called. They just handed us the next chapter. Let's hit them where they can't spin it. The courts. The next move was bold. Risky. Almost reckless. Kim flew to D.C. the following week, under the radar. No press. No posts. Just her, Mark Ruffalo, Vin Jones, and 2 immigration attorneys with decades of experience. They met with senators behind closed doors, pitched policy revisions, pushed for hearings. And through it all, Kim kept thinking of Lucia's kids, of that teenager who handed her the mic, of the flashbang that had exploded just feet from her heels. It stopped being about Kim Kardashian long ago. This wasn't a brand. It wasn't a headline. It was a reckoning. But then, as they walked out of the Capitol building, a black SUV slowed near the curb. A man inside stared for a second too long. And just like that, she knew. They were being watched. Not by paparazzi. Not by fans. By someone else. The next part of the story wouldn't unfold on the news. It would happen in silence. In shadows. In quiet threats and closed doors. And Kim, though she'd spent most of her life in front of cameras, was about to enter a world far darker than she'd ever known. The first letter arrived 2 days after she returned from D.C. No return address. Handwritten. Thick ivory envelope, sealed with old-fashioned red wax. At first, Kim thought it was a fan letter, maybe one of those dramatic, romantic types who styled themselves like a Netflix villain. But when she opened it, her stomach knotted. Inside, a photo of her house from above. Drone angle. Not like paparazzi. Military. The kind of shot that wasn't meant for magazines. No words. Just a single sentence printed on the back. You're not untouchable. She didn't scream. Didn't panic. She walked into her bathroom, turned the shower on full blast, sat on the heated tile, and dialed Van Jones. They know where I sleep, she said. They're watching. He paused. You want out? No, she whispered. I want a firewall. Within 24 hours, Kim's security tripled. Armed guards. Rotation schedules. Surveillance jammers. But the emotional fortress? That one was harder to build. North started asking why men with guns were standing in the garden at night. Psalm cried when they had to leave the park early because a suspicious man followed them for 3 blocks. And through it all, the movement grew. The public began demanding answers. Homeland Security was forced to attend hearings. ICE officers were pulled from 2 LA sectors under scrutiny. A federal judge blocked future raids pending an audit. And behind the scenes, Kim funded over 800 legal cases quietly through shell foundations. Mothers reunited with children. Workers returned to their homes. Lives were stitched back together. But fame has a price. And someone wanted hers revoked. They came for Pedro Pascal first. An anonymous tip. Child pornography accusations. Completely false, but enough to get him pulled from a major production. The story ran on 3 outlets before his team shut it down. Then Chrissy's emails leaked. Edited, manipulated, sent out of context. A line about burning IC to the ground taken literally by conservative media. She got death threats. Sponsors pulled deals. Then Eva's old visa came under scrutiny. She'd been naturalized for over 2 decades, but suddenly, her citizenship was being reviewed. They were under siege. And then, the audio. Kim was on her way to a foundation board meeting when Stephanie, her assistant, walked in pale as death, holding a phone. You need to listen to this. It was Kim's voice. But not any conversation she remembered. They're not even Americans. Why should we risk our lives for them? Silence. Then laughter. Her laughter. But she hadn't said it. Not like that. Not ever. It was spliced. Doctored. AI generated. Perfectly faked. But it didn't matter. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Kim exposed. Hypocrite queen. Caught on tape. Networks, influencers, politicians, they all pounced. Even some progressives flinched. She watched the video play again on cable news. Eyes burning. You know what? She muttered, standing. Let's not deny it. Let's dissect it. That night, she live-streamed. Full face. No glam. Raw. I know what you heard. And I know what it sounds like. But let me be clear. I've spent my life in front of cameras. If I said it, you'd find the tape. The real one. Not a Frankenstein cut made by cowards too afraid to show their own face. The comments poured in. Half hate. Half love. But it was the quiet DM from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that lit the match again. They're terrified of the power you're building. That means you're doing something right. Stay in the fight. You're not alone. And just like that, the storm shifted. The New York Times ran an investigation on AI-generated misinformation. Pedro went public, naming the federal officer who tried to blackmail him. Chrissy filed a lawsuit against a right-wing media site. Eva appeared before Congress, testifying about intimidation tactics. But for Kim, the hardest blow came from within. It was Mark Ruffalo who confronted her. "You have to be honest," he said one night, pacing the hotel suite they'd turned into a war room. "Are you doing this for them? Or are you doing this for you?" She stared at him. The man who stood by her side in the streets, who had cried with Lucia's son, who had risked his career. And she realized the question hurt because it wasn't entirely unfair. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "I started for them. But now, I think I need it too. I need to feel like my life matters." "It already does." "No, Mark. Not because of beauty or money. Because I finally see what I'm capable of when the filters come off." Silence stretched. Then he nodded. "Then let's burn the whole thing down and rebuild it." The next morning, they went nuclear. They published a 400-page document called the Black File, an exposé compiled by whistleblowers, lawyers, journalists. Inside, evidence of illegal IC tactics, audio recordings of agents mocking detainees, signed affidavits from officers ordered to falsify reports. It was damning. The government couldn't spin it. Congress called for emergency hearings. The president, for the first time, distanced himself from IC operations. And in Los Angeles, people took to the streets again, but this time not in fear. In celebration. Kim watched from her balcony. No makeup, just coffee and wind in her hair. Her phone buzzed again. Headlines, calls, offers for interviews. She ignored them. Then North appeared beside her. "Mom," she asked, "are we the good guys?" Kim looked at her daughter's face. Innocent, curious, brilliant, and said, "We're trying to be." And for the first time in weeks, she believed it. But as she turned to go inside, her eyes caught a figure across the street. Same man from D.C. Same stillness. Watching. The storm hadn't passed. It had only shifted forms. The call came from Chrissy at 4:13 a.m. Her voice was brittle, half breath, half panic. "They arrested Pedro." Kim sat bolt upright. "What? What do you mean arrested?" "In New York." Said he crossed state lines during the protest under a federal surveillance injunction. "They're calling it obstruction of justice. They're trying to charge him federally, Kim." Federally. Kim was already out of bed, phone on speaker, pulling on a hoodie. "Lawyer. Already sent. They're holding him in a Homeland black site." Black site. The words hit like a kick to the ribs. Not jail. Not court. A place where rules bend and vanish. By noon, it was all over the internet. Pedro Pascal's mugshot. He looked calm, but behind his eyes, something flickered. Not fear. Calculation. As if he knew exactly what this arrest was really about. Punishment disguised as law. The fallout came fast. Hashtag Free Pedro trended for 48 hours straight. Actors, musicians, directors, they all rallied. But none louder than Kim. She sat down with the Washington Post. No glam, no filter. "If you think this will scare us," she said, "then you've never met Pedro Pascal." 2 days later, Mark Ruffalo disappeared. No announcement. No warning. His assistant stopped answering texts. His family stayed quiet. The news said he was on sabbatical, but everyone close knew the truth. He was hiding. Word came in through back channels. A warning from an old political contact. "There's a list. Kim's name is first. Mark was next." And then came the night the drones appeared. It started as a whisper. Kim noticed the flicker on her security feed. Shadows moving faster than wind. Her head of security confirmed it. 3 autonomous drones hovering for hours. Not media. Not hobbyist. Military grade. "We're pulling you to a secure location," they said. "No. Kim, this isn't negotiable. There are protocols." "I'm done being hidden," she snapped. "If they want to come for me, let them do it in daylight." But she didn't sleep. Not that night. Not for many after. Because something darker was bubbling now. Not just government surveillance. Not just weaponized media. There were fractures forming within the resistance itself. Whispers began. That maybe someone in their circle was feeding intel to the other side. Too many leaks. Too many coincidences. Chrissy confronted Eva. Eva swore on her life. Van Jones grew cold and withdrawn, like he was preparing for a storm no one else could see. And then the email leak hit. Internal messages between Kim and her lawyer. Strategy discussions. Names of families they were helping. Locations of safe houses. Public now. People went missing. Lucia, the woman who'd stood beside Kim on that first press conference, gone. Her 3 children picked up by Child Protective Services, placed in separate shelters. Kim tried everything, legal channels, contacts, pressure. But every door slammed shut. Unfit environment, the state claimed. Political instability. Kim stood outside the courtroom that denied Lucia custody and screamed. For the first time since it all began, she broke. No cameras. No speech. Just her fists clenched, her soul on fire, as her voice cracked against marble walls that would not echo back. She called Kanye. She didn't even know why. Maybe because he was the last person who knew the old version of her. He answered on the second ring. "I'm sorry," she said. "For everything. For pushing you away. For thinking I could fix everything with filters and causes and—" "Kim, what? You don't have to be a martyr to matter." Silence. Then, "But if you're gonna burn it down, I'll be there with a match." And for the first time in weeks, she laughed. A tired, crooked thing. But real. They met at a warehouse in East LA. A private assembly. 73 people. Lawyers. Activists. Celebrities. Organizers. Off-the-grid types. People who knew what it meant to disappear and keep fighting. And Kim laid it all out. "We're not fighting for headlines anymore," she said. "We're fighting for systems. Laws. Minds. This is not just about IC. This is about every system that depends on fear to survive." The room buzzed. And then Finneas, still limping from the protest, eyes dark with purpose, said, "Then let's build our own system." It started with a simple idea: create a decentralized, private legal defense fund that couldn't be frozen or subpoenaed. Use blockchain to move resources. Use influencers to fundraise. Use artists to spread message. Use lawyers to win. In 2 weeks, they raised $34 million. Kim met with whistleblowers in basements, drove to detention centers at 3 a.m. in disguise, slept in safe houses surrounded by armed ex-Special Forces volunteers. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in August, she got the call that shattered the edge she'd built. Pedro Pascal was released. But not the same. He looked broken. He didn't speak for hours. Just sat with her, hands trembling. When he finally did speak, it was one sentence. "They want you to stop, Kim." She stared. "They told me. Over and over. They don't want you gone. They want you exhausted. They want you questioning your own voice. They want to make you feel like you're doing more harm than good." She sat still, processing, breathing. And then she whispered, "They'll have to do better than that." Because the truth was, she was tired. She was scared. She was rattled to her core. But she wasn't done. Because someone, somewhere, had to believe that even the most surgically constructed fame in the world could become a weapon for something real. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be louder than the silence they were trying to build around her. The subpoena arrived on a Tuesday. 9:07 a.m. hand-delivered. A federal order. Kim Kardashian was to appear before a closed-session congressional subcommittee investigating civilian interference in national security operations. Translation: they were going to try to silence her in the most official way possible, by making her look like the threat. Her legal team tried to block it. Motion after motion. But nothing stuck. The system had turned its face. And when it did, it moved with a cold, practiced efficiency that no amount of money could slow. She arrived in D.C. alone. No entourage. No makeup artist. Just her and a thick folder filled with affidavits, reports, photos of bruises and burned shoes and missing children's drawings found at the sites of raids. And something else. A USB drive. Inside it, a full dump of internal IC communications leaked from a whistleblower 2 weeks earlier. Proof of quotas. Proof of abuse. Proof that the chaos was not incidental, but engineered. Kim sat alone in a cold white hallway, guards posted every 20 feet, fluorescent lights humming like wasps overhead. A woman in a dark blazer walked past her without looking. A man across the hall watched her like she was a loaded weapon. She thought about turning back. She thought about north. Then the door opened, and she walked in. The room wasn't what she expected. No gavel. No grand speeches. Just 8 people. Some looking bored. Others looking furious. One looked frightened. She was sworn in. Told to sit. Then the questioning began. It was civil at first. Polite. "Miss Kardashian, do you understand the potential consequences of using private funds to obstruct federal operations?" "Yes." "Did you or did you not knowingly interfere with law enforcement?" "I interfered with injustice." "If that's a crime, I'm guilty." The tone shifted. "You're a celebrity, not a policymaker. What gives you the right?" "I'm a citizen. That gives me the right." And then she slid the USB across the table. "You want to know why I interfered?" Because this is what I saw. The room went silent as the files loaded. Photos, emails, names, dates, and then video. Body cam footage of a raid gone wrong. Children screaming. A man begging in broken English. An ICE officer laughing. It played for 1 minute. No one spoke. Then the chairman leaned forward, voice low. Miss Kardashian, are you aware this material was obtained illegally? Kim's voice didn't tremble. Are you aware those people were treated illegally? A pause. Then, this meeting is adjourned. She walked out into the hallway, heart pounding, knees shaking. And when she stepped outside, the press waited. 1,000 cameras. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Because something had changed. Not just in her. In them. The next morning, Congress voted to initiate an internal review of ICE oversight practices. The motion passed, barely. But it passed. Within the month, the whistleblower was granted immunity. Lucia was reunited with her kids. Pedro began speaking again, at rallies, at schools, at fundraisers. Eva launched an initiative for immigrant-led startup grants. And Kim? She went home. Back to Calabasas. But not to hide. To rest. To breathe. To remember she was still human. The final protest came on a Sunday. September heat rising like a ghost off the streets of downtown LA. No stage. No press. Just people. Thousands of them. Marching not in anger, but in resolve. Kim stood at the back. Hat pulled low. Hoodie drawn up. Just another face in the crowd. But someone recognized her. A little girl. No more than 9. Dark curls, wide eyes, holding her mother's hand. She pointed. Mom, it's her. Her mother turned, looked Kim in the eye, then whispered, thank you. No selfie. No spotlight. Just that. Kim turned to go. Tears already stinging her eyes. Because in the end, it wasn't about noise. It wasn't about being seen. It was about choosing to see. To see injustice and say no. To see fear and say not here. To see power and decide that yours mattered too. And for the first time in her life, Kim Kardashian wasn't famous for being famous. She was known for standing up when it mattered most. Not perfect. Not polished. Just present. And that made all the difference. And